When the world's wealthiest man leaned in and quietly told his tearful wife, "Too late," it wasn't simply the end of a marriage. It was the execution of one of the most calculated acts of revenge in recent memory. What Lauren Sanchez realized in that moment shook the upper circles of society and exposed the hidden machinery of power at its peak. The chandeliers of the Venetian palazzo still sparkled, their crystals reflecting the fading Mediterranean light. But Lauren Sanchez wasn't admiring the beauty anymore. She was fixed on the cold, deliberate gaze of Jeff Bezos, the man who had pledged her forever just a month earlier, as he delivered 2 words that would alter her entire life. Not shouted in rage, not murmured with affection. Delivered with the same calm precision Bezos used to close an unprofitable Amazon division. 2 words that not only ended their union, but also set in motion a meticulously designed unraveling of her world, engineered by immense private wealth. Yet this story doesn't truly start with that moment. It began months earlier inside the sterile boardrooms of Manhattan's most influential law firms. There, teams of attorneys were drafting what insiders now refer to as the most dangerous legal document ever written. A prenuptial agreement so detailed and unyielding that one attorney remarked, "I've reviewed corporate merger contracts with fewer restrictions." This wasn't a standard marital agreement. It was a financial weapon, carefully constructed. What became known as the Venetian trap, the wedding of Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez, was celebrated as the grandest event of the decade. Venice's canals glowed under chandeliers imported from Paris, setting the stage for what appeared to be a fairy tale but was, in truth, something far more strategic. When the world's wealthiest man leaned in and quietly told his tearful wife, "Too late," it wasn't simply the end of a marriage. It was the execution of one of the most calculated acts of revenge in recent memory. What Lauren Sanchez realized in that moment shook the upper circles of society and exposed the hidden machinery of power at its peak. The chandeliers of the Venetian palazzo still sparkled, their crystals reflecting the fading Mediterranean light. But Lauren Sanchez wasn't admiring the beauty anymore. She was fixed on the cold, deliberate gaze of Jeff Bezos, the man who had pledged her forever just a month earlier, as he delivered 2 words that would alter her entire life. Not shouted in rage, not murmured with affection. Delivered with the same calm precision Bezos used to close an unprofitable Amazon division. 2 words that not only ended their union, but also set in motion a meticulously designed unraveling of her world, engineered by immense private wealth. Yet this story doesn't truly start with that moment. It began months earlier inside the sterile boardrooms of Manhattan's most influential law firms. There, teams of attorneys were drafting what insiders now refer to as the most dangerous legal document ever written. A prenuptial agreement so detailed and unyielding that one attorney remarked, "I've reviewed corporate merger contracts with fewer restrictions." This wasn't a standard marital agreement. It was a financial weapon, carefully constructed. What became known as the Venetian trap, the wedding of Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez, was celebrated as the grandest event of the decade. Venice's canals glowed under chandeliers imported from Paris, setting the stage for what appeared to be a fairy tale but was, in truth, something far more strategic. The document was divided into 7 separate sections, each more restrictive than the one before. According to those familiar with its contents, it reads less like a marriage contract and more like a legal weapon disguised as protection. The first was the silence clause, which blocked Lauren from writing, publishing, or assisting with any memoir, article, or documentary about their relationship without written approval. Breaking it wouldn't just cancel her claims, it would trigger financial penalties significant enough to wipe out her assets. The second was the image clause, which controlled how she could use the marriage in public. Every appearance, endorsement, or even a photo opportunity could be flagged as a breach. One lawyer said the restrictions resembled a corporate non-compete more than a marital agreement. The third was the circle clause, which stopped her from having personal or business ties with anyone labeled a rival to Bezos. Because the definition was so broad, it could cover dozens of high-profile figures, cutting her off from entire networks. The fourth was the influence clause, barring her from taking part in political fundraising or advocacy that might suggest she was using the marriage for influence. This stripped her of the chance to build independent political standing. The fifth was the inheritance clause, structuring assets so that nothing could pass to her without strict approval from Bezos's lawyers, even in the case of his death. The sixth was the confidentiality clause, preventing her from sharing any information about business matters, family issues, or financial arrangements. In effect, it created a permanent gag order on her personal experiences. The most damaging part was what insiders dubbed the 5 billion boomerang. This clause stated that if Lauren engaged in any unapproved branding activity, all of her financial rights would be terminated immediately. Bezos wasn't required to prove intent, only the act itself. One legal expert described it as Lauren signing her own financial death sentence. Every public smile, every magazine feature, every effort to raise her profile was simultaneously building a case against her. The agreement also included what lawyers refer to as cascade clauses, rules that ensured if one section was violated, penalties would automatically apply across all others. The design was airtight, where a single mistake could trigger a chain reaction of consequences. A legal pressure cooker, so why would anyone agree to such terms? The answer lies in the psychological campaign that surrounded the signing. The contract was delivered at the most vulnerable moment possible, just days before the wedding, when backing out would have meant international humiliation. Sources close to the deal say the manipulation began weeks in advance. Lauren was gradually distanced from her legal advisors through carefully arranged scheduling conflicts and sudden emergencies that demanded her personal involvement. By the time she received the document, she was exhausted, isolated, and surrounded only by Bezos's team. The world was already watching. Magazines had pre-written cover stories. Guests had traveled from around the globe. Designers had sent gowns worth hundreds of thousands. And in the middle of this, Lauren was presented with an ultimatum: sign the contract or cancel the wedding. According to one insider, there was no opportunity for an independent legal review, no chance to negotiate terms. What was framed as urgency for love was, in practice, coercion. She faced a choice between public disgrace and financial ruin. Even the signing itself was staged. Marketed as a romantic keepsake, the ceremony was actually recorded to create legal proof of her voluntary agreement. Multiple cameras captured her signature from every angle, eliminating any chance of future claims of duress. Lauren signed. In that moment, she locked herself into a fate she couldn't fully grasp. Then came the 30-day countdown. What unfolded in the month between I do and too late revealed the calculated precision of Bezos's plan. While Lauren believed she was enjoying her honeymoon period, Bezos's team was quietly recording her every move. A well-organized monitoring system was put into action right after the wedding. Algorithms scanned her social media posts to detect any possible breaches of contract. Public appearances were logged and compared against image clause restrictions. Business-related conversations were tracked through digital surveillance that Lauren had no idea was in place. Each Instagram post was reviewed for violations. Every public event was recorded as documentation. Every interview was examined for any misuse of her new position. Lauren assumed she was shaping her brand as the influential wife of a billionaire. In truth, she was unknowingly building the foundation of her own case file. She remained completely unaware that all her actions were being collected as evidence against her, according to a former insider from Bezos's circle. He let her continue making errors while gathering proof over several months before taking action. It was described as watching someone build a ladder, only to realize later that it was fixed to a trapdoor. The monitoring wasn't limited to digital activity. Private investigators were also used to follow Lauren's movements, track her social interactions, and record conversations with her friends and family. Every lunch outing, shopping trip, and casual meeting was documented as potential evidence. A critical piece of evidence surfaced during a charity gala where Lauren delivered an unscheduled speech on women's empowerment. While it appeared harmless at the time, the speech was later flagged as an unauthorized use of her platform for personal promotion. directly breaching the image clause. This moment became the turning point. Interestingly, the issue didn't stem from a magazine feature or a careless online post. It arose from something far more personal. Rumors of betrayal shook the foundation of trust within the billionaire circle. Sources close to the matter pointed to broken confidences, violated loyalties, and boundaries crossed beyond repair. At the center of it all was Lauren's reported connection with several prominent entertainment executives, figures viewed as direct competitors to Bezos's growing media ventures. According to intelligence gathered by Bezos's team, Lauren had allegedly shared confidential details about Amazon's streaming strategy with these rivals, risking billion-dollar deals. But the deeper fracture came from the personal side. Reports suggest Lauren was also holding secret meetings with Bezos's former business partners, individuals he regarded as adversaries after long and bitter corporate disputes. Surveillance footage reportedly captured her discussing not only business matters but also sensitive details about Bezos's private life and philosophy. As one insider explained, this wasn't just about business leaks. It was about personal trust. In Jeff's world, violating the inner circle's loyalty is an unforgivable act. Once that trust was broken, the outcome was inevitable. In the elite world of the ultra-wealthy, betrayal is not defined solely by romance. It extends to business alliances, political ties, and billion-dollar agreements sustained by personal trust. By crossing that boundary, Lauren didn't just betray Bezos. She endangered an entire network built on loyalty and discretion. The breaking point came when Lauren was covertly recorded speaking with a documentary filmmaker critical of Amazon's operations, where she discussed Bezos's private philanthropic strategies. Using advanced surveillance tools, the recording revealed her sharing confidential details about Bezos's political contributions and methods of minimizing tax obligations. When Bezos executed his plan, the speed and accuracy were striking. Legal filings appeared in multiple jurisdictions at the same time. Assets were frozen within hours. Business partners received cease and desist notices. Invitations to events disappeared immediately. One attorney described it not as a divorce, but as a blitzkrieg. The legal approach left no opportunity for resistance. By the time Lauren realized the scope of the attack, every possible defense had been eliminated. The legal offensive unfolded across several fronts. Civil cases were launched in New York, California, and Delaware. Federal prosecutors received criminal referrals tied to suspected corporate espionage. Complaints were sent to the SEC over possible insider trading. Yet, the most damaging blow struck through Lauren's professional and social networks, the very foundation of her influence. Within 24 hours of the filings, key figures in entertainment, politics, and social media were briefed in detail about her alleged actions. The impact on her reputation was immediate. In elite circles where trust defines status, rumors began labeling her as unreliable, disloyal, and even risky to associate with. The same networks that had once celebrated her as Bezos's partner now turned against her with exacting precision. Hollywood contacts stopped replying. Political allies stepped back. Social invitations vanished. The message was unmistakable. Siding with Bezos meant security. Supporting Lauren meant isolation. No one chose isolation. Adding to the severity, Lauren's business relationships collapsed systematically. Partners who had entered profitable agreements due to her connection with Bezos saw their contracts canceled, citing moral clauses that had been discreetly included months earlier. The $5 billion boomerang struck hard. Bezos's strategy of revenge worked because Lauren's own choices became the instruments of her downfall. Every glossy magazine cover that once raised her profile now stood as proof of her contract breach. Each glamorous photo shoot that boosted her brand now highlighted the unauthorized use of her marriage identity. The very tools she had used to rise became the weapons that brought her down. Legal experts call it a flawless loop, where the subject's success automatically triggers their collapse. With every public appearance, she was building her own undoing. As one lawyer noted, Bezos simply waited for the right moment to close the lid. The financial destruction was complete. Lauren's assets were frozen, and the contract's design stripped her of the ability to leverage her image for new ventures. Book deals disappeared. Speaking events were canceled. Business partners walked away instantly. The domino effect unfolded exactly as intended. Breaking the image clause triggered penalties tied to inheritance terms. Violating confidentiality activated strict gag rules. Unauthorized branding stripped her of exclusive privileges. Each breach magnified the others until Lauren faced financial ruin from all angles at once. Yet, the psychological damage cut even deeper. Bound by gag clauses and shunned socially, she found herself silenced in a way that felt louder than words, untouchable and isolated. Private investigators tracked her movements, making sure any attempt to restart her life was swiftly detected and blocked. She couldn't even seek therapy without fearing that her words might be monitored and turned against her. The fallout from Lauren Sanchez's downfall sent ripples far beyond Hollywood, shaking the upper tiers of society. Politicians tightened alliances, business leaders re-examined their inner circles, and entertainment executives reassessed their loyalties. As one Washington insider explained, this wasn't merely a divorce, it was a demonstration of how power truly operates at the highest levels. Every influential figure observing the situation took note of the risks that come with crossing the wrong person. The episode exposed the hidden machinery of influence, how favors circulate within elite networks, how whispers can shape outcomes, and how loyalty is negotiated through access and opportunity. Suddenly, those dynamics were in plain sight, and visibility posed a threat to those accustomed to working in the shadows. In response, corporate attorneys nationwide began drafting more sophisticated prenuptial agreements, drawing lessons from the Bezos Sanchez case. These contracts became blueprints not just for financial protection, but for safeguarding strategic power against betrayal. Within elite circles, marriage counselors reported an influx of clients seeking guidance on managing relationships where business and personal interests overlapped. Trust, it seemed, had become a scarce commodity, even among billionaires. As the dust settled, Lauren attempted a comeback. But every route forward was blocked by the very contract she had agreed to. Legal challenges proved futile. The agreement had been designed by some of the sharpest legal minds available. Public sympathy was minimal, the media narrative carefully controlled, and reintegration into elite society was impossible. Her fate had already been sealed by those in power. She now found herself confined by her own decisions. The signatures that once promised security transformed into barriers. Once a figure of glamour and influence on magazine covers, she had become a cautionary example whispered in influential corridors. Even her efforts to share her side of the story were swiftly silenced through legal action. Publishers who showed interest in her memoir soon received intimidating letters from Bezos' legal team. Journalists attempting to interview her suddenly found their access to other powerful figures restricted. Lauren's efforts to participate in charitable work, often a way for the disgraced elite to restore reputation, were deliberately obstructed. Nonprofits that welcomed her saw major donors quickly pull out. Board invitations were withdrawn after quiet interventions from influential patrons. Even her family ties became strained. Friends and relatives were forced to choose between supporting Lauren and protecting their own careers. The stigma was so overwhelming that being linked to her became damaging for anyone hoping to remain within elite circles. And then came the final moment. When Bezos looked her in the eyes and said, "Too late," it was more than the end of their relationship. It marked the conclusion of one of the most calculated personal takedowns ever executed by private wealth. What seemed like an emotional reaction was, in fact, the closing move of a strategy designed over years. The $5 billion boomerang landed with flawless precision. Every potential claim, every future opportunity, every valuable connection, erased through the very contract that once promised protection. The glamorous wedding in Venice wasn't truly about love. It was the first act in a meticulously designed campaign of retribution. The chandeliers, gondolas, and couture gowns were not symbols of romance but elements of a performance in which only Bezos knew the full script. Today, Lauren's downfall is studied in elite business schools. Not as a love story gone wrong, but as a case study in strategy, preparation, and control. Future leaders examine how carefully Bezos planned, how thoroughly he prepared, and how decisively he executed. For Lauren, the realization was devastating. When dealing with figures of immense power, the risk isn't just losing, it's being erased entirely. The world's richest man demonstrated that some victories are not about money, but about the complete destruction of those who oppose him. His 2 words, "too late," didn't just end a marriage. They ended her social standing, leaving behind only the lesson of what happens when betrayal collides with absolute authority. In the realm of extreme wealth, love may be spoken at the altar, but true battles are fought in boardrooms, where contracts can transform fairy tales into nightmares with just 2 words. The takeaway from this modern tragedy: in the world of the ultra-wealthy, relationships double as battlefields, contracts become weapons, and betrayal carries the weight of a carefully executed sentence delivered with cold, strategic precision.